We're going to do this. We're going to have a candid conversation today about mastering pricing in this market. And what is so funny is I have 3 masterminds today, and the mastermind before this brought the topic up, and I was like, join us for the next one because we're gonna go deeper into this conversation. Okay, you guys, for those of you who've never been on Mastery Models Mastermind before, I'm gonna just lay out kind of how this works. And just know that we got a couple of ground rules. Number 1, we're going to have a lot of fun. Number 2, if you are on the call and you have your camera off, but you are in show ready condition or at least presentable condition, please turn your camera on. Although we love talking to little black boxes, we actually prefer to see real life people. And that is the entire point of a mastermind. We are going to start with an interview with a top producer that is a master on this topic. We are going to talk a little tactics so you guys have action items to take away from today. And then we are going to open it up for questions and discussions along the way so that we can make sure that we're covering as many of those as possible. All right, ground rules done. Stephanie, let's take this away. All right, unmute yourself though so we can all hear you.
Okay.
There we go. All right. One of the things I love about Stephanie, she's been a top producer for a long time. I believe 16 listings already taken this year, maybe more. But she calls it as she sees it. And she is going to be unfiltered Stephanie today, out there rocking it in the world, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
We are going to launch this thing off with mindset, which is a huge piece of what we're finding with not only the agents approaching the mindset of pricing, but also mindset of our sellers as we're walking through this conversation. So we can all agree that we are in a crazy different market. We are in historic low inventory levels. We have been there for a very long time. How has this new market or this changing market changed your mindset around pricing of homes?
Well, around pricing a home specifically, it's kind of been interesting because there's a lot of times where we can look at the numbers. And I think that historically, you would pull comparables and you would see what sold in the last 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, whatever your market is dictating. And then from those comparables, you would then be able to determine, average price per square foot or, come up with some sort of a metric that would assist you in pricing that property. And now, almost when we look at what sold 3 months ago, that tells a story of what was going on 4 months ago, right? And that's what buyers were offering at that time. It really doesn't tell us what's going on right now. And so we almost have to future pace where we're pricing things. And, I think one of the things we'll talk about is, can you underprice something? And I don't think that you can right now, because I think that the market will just continue to dictate by the offers that you receive what a buyer is willing to pay for that house. So how it's changed my view on that is I think I look at the comparables, and I certainly do my research in the same way that I always have. I think I pay maybe some attention to actives too, because I think that tells the story of what's going on right now versus the story of what happened 3 months ago, because I think that sometimes is irrelevant. So we'll discuss those, and then I usually will take a look at actives. I'll go into the MLS and I'll say, okay, I'm a buyer. I want to buy a house just like this house today. What else can I buy? And what are my other options? And then a lot of times I will use the actives to inform exactly what price I select to list that property at.
I love that. I'm going to call out some of the things that you just said, the future pacing of pricing, like that. You guys take that away. And I love that if you're not already doing it, right, in a market of today, is what else can your money buy? Right? So instead of going back 3 or 6 months to pull our comps, those are important, right? Sure. That is what we would consider, right, Stephanie, the science of pricing, right?
Yeah.
Of the analytics are the scientific part of pricing. The future pacing is what I would consider the art of pricing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That hey, we don't know exactly what it is, but what we do know is if you have $550,000, this is what you can get for that in today's market.
Correct. Yep. And sometimes that's kind of how we may have you know, kind of a ballpark range based upon the comparables, but I will usually always go in and look at the actives to see right here, right now, today, because really, guys, that's how fast our market is moving. In most areas, at least here, you know, we're seeing like average days on market to be between 4 and 6 days for most properties. So, you know, we really, I mean, it's almost a disservice to look at what happened 3 months ago, because that really doesn't tell us what's going on right now, I think.
It could tell us a trend, right? Like if we went back 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, once again, science. I love this conversation. And so for those of you guys who don't know, I forgot to say, many of you do know Stephanie. She's in Eugene, and Eugene has the unique honor of being the lowest inventory levels in the entire state of Oregon. So congratulations to everybody in Eugene on the call. You win the prize. Okay, so let's shift to that next conversation, because this is a mindset conversation as well. For those of you who were on the last mastermind, this topic came up. Is there's so much noise around pricing, and also fear, right? That many sellers are afraid of underpricing their home or leaving money on the table. Sometimes that fear can just be from what they've heard, and sometimes it might be because Zillow said their home was worth $80,000 more. Yeah. So what's your thoughts around underpricing properties?
Well, two things with that. So I think right now in this market, I don't think you can underprice a property. I think that especially here where we do have the lowest inventory in the state, as Leslie just informed us. Anywhere else, I mean, I am willing to bet you also are struggling with very low inventory, and I believe that is a problem. Maybe it's not a problem, but something that we're seeing not just here locally, but really all across the US. So, you know, we are in short supply of housing, and we have a ton of buyers. So, you know, I think that ultimately a house, you know, we can do all the science in the world and figure out all the comparables and have our little metrics and, you know, algorithms and whatever, but ultimately a house is worth what a buyer is willing to pay. And we have a ton of buyers and very few homes. So supply and demand. And I think that the buyers and the demand will push that price to where it needs to be. Ultimately, you just can't underprice it.
I love that. And I would even add to that, right? Like a house is only worth what somebody is willing to pay, but the addition I would say is the house is only worth what a ready, willing, and able buyer will pay for a home.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think with that too, you know, I think sometimes sellers, I will have a conversation, and I say this like not to do a disservice to our sellers, but, you know, I think we still need to always have conversations about what their net goal is and where they really need to end up. And so if they are concerned about underpricing, like I would probably always have a conversation about, you know, why is that your concern, and what is it that you really need to get out of this house, and why is that? Because there's always a reason why. So, I mean, on the off chance that you're wrong, and for whatever reason this house doesn't sell, I certainly wouldn't do a disservice to the seller and price it too low if that number wasn't one that they could live with, if worst case scenario it only sold for list price.
I love that. And one of the things that we talk about, right, you guys, is anybody going out and listing homes right now needs to be prepared for the conversation or fear, limiting belief that a seller might have about underpricing. You're going to need to beef up your scripts, right? Like we need to have a conversation with them, a candid conversation, right, of what their goals are. But the truth of the matter is you guys, is a script that I always used is there's literally no way I could undersell your home. The only way that could happen is if I put your house on the market, like right now, let one person walk through it in the next 10 minutes and then accepted the offer, right? That's literally the only way we could undersell a home. And clearly we're not going to do that, right? Ultimately, your properties work with what a ready, willing, and able buyer is going to pay. So my job is to expose it to the most amount of buyers so that they can tell us not what the market says your home is worth, but what they're willing to pay for it in this market, right?
Yep.
Stephanie, would you add anything else to that script?
No, I mean, I think I oftentimes just I would follow what you're saying. And I oftentimes will tell them that a lot of this, it's more about like the seller's convenience and how we structure the showings and how we structure kind of the whole process to ensure that they get the most amount of money for that home. And so, I think, like you said, exposing it to the most amount of buyers. So, I mean, I often will like list it on a Thursday. It's available Friday for appointment showing. Saturday, Sunday, we have an open house, available Monday, and then offers are due at a certain date and time on Tuesday or Wednesday. And I do tend to find that not only does that give their property the most exposure, and it doesn't limit us to the first offer that comes in. Oftentimes I find that the best offers come in like right at the 11th hour, right before. And I had an example of that a couple weeks ago where one sold for like 40,000+ over. The first offer we got was super low. So had we just taken that, we would have lost out on a nice big chunk of money for that seller. So yeah, sometimes I structure that conversation as it's for your convenience, so that we're only going to accept showings during these times. This is when we're going to do the offer. And I think it sets your seller up to feel like, although we are in a really crazy market, like we came in with a plan, we're really organized, and this is the way that we're going to make sure that you get the most amount of money out of your house.
Okay, there was so much good in that. I'm going to stop and we're going to break it down a little bit in case you guys missed some of that, right? I think sometimes that we miss the mark when we talk to our sellers purely about price, right?
Yeah. It's not always price. It's not always price. I think it's convenience. And right, in this market, like the price is the lever that probably 90% of the time, like it's gonna go for over asking. I mean, most things are, right? So it's not really about that. That's not the conversation we're having. It's more about their convenience and structuring the whole transaction and their experience really to be the best that it can be, and to make sure that we're making sure that they get the best offer, the highest offer, and that we're not like leaving money on the table, I think.
And I think the other piece like that you're saying that's embedded there is this isn't about price necessarily. This is about the sales strategy, right? Like what if you stop talking to them about setting a price on their home and start talking to them about, this is the strategy we're going to sell your home. In Stephanie's case, we're going to list it here. We're going to hold it open here, here, and here. We're going to look at offers here. We're going to accept it. That becomes a strategy that they can understand instead of just the baseline linear conversation of what is the price that you're going to put on my house.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, the other thing for sellers too is like, I think that if we put ourselves in their shoes for a minute, like, they get the house ready, it's ready to go. We do pictures. I mean, they're nervous, they're scared, right? Like, I mean, we do this every day. And I think sometimes we forget that like, this is an uncomfortable process for them sometimes. So I think all the ways that we can talk to them, not just about price, but how do we make this a comfortable process for them and an easy process for them and a smooth process for them, I think sets them up for success. Because, most properties, and especially like I was talking to some folks yesterday, and they're going to have a home priced in the 300s in Ferry Street Bridge. So for all you here in Eugene, come talk to me about that. But, so I just said, you guys are going to be literally bombarded with people, peeking in your windows, driving, but this is going to be really insane for a couple of days. So, usually what I do is I just suggest that they get the house ready to go. We do our photos, and then they go to the coast for the weekend or something. And that way, there is minimal stress on them. They don't have to pack up the dogs and the kids and everybody and jump out of the house in 10 minutes. And, so I usually will kind of set them up for a good experience that way too. And then the other thing too, with the offers, when I'm talking to them about that, it's not always a price conversation. Like a lot of times it's convenience, and a lot of times it's the better terms. You may get a really high offer, but I mean, unless that buyer can actually pay that amount and has the cash to guarantee what they've offered you, it really doesn't mean anything out of the gate. And so I think I more sell, my value probably comes from being able to interpret which offer is actually the strongest offer.
And that's the consultant part of this, right? Like that's also the art of negotiation, right? And understanding those pieces. Now you said that, I know that we've got some wows in the comment box and people are like, houses in the 300s, what? Sign me up. So let's go there. Are you seeing a difference in pricing strategies between different price points of home, right? Entry level, move up, luxury, or are you approaching the pricing conversation the same in every single price category?
Yeah, I mean, I think really like it's kind of the same in every category, right? It's just, you're just kind of dealing with a different price home. I mean, I do the exact same thing. I mean, I run the comparables, I look at the actives, I, you know, have a pretty consultative like interview with my seller as to like really what is important to you about this whole process and what do you need to net from this, and those types of conversations. So that's really all the same. And I mean, truly in our market here, you know, yeah, under 300, I mean, yeah, good luck. You're probably going to have 17 offers or more. But we're also seeing basically that same trend up in the $800,000-$900,000 in the million range too. Maybe not that many offers, but you know, you probably end up with a solid 3 to 4. So yeah.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that we're seeing is where luxury markets usually move a little slower, right? With such low interest rates, it's a great time to buy luxury property, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about buyer or seller expectation. What happens when the seller goes into an expectation that they are going to get $50,000, $70,000, $80,000 more, and that doesn't turn out, right? Like, how are you helping navigate your sellers through that conversation?
Well, you know, again, I'm pretty conservative, and I'm pretty like humble about how I approach things. So I don't really go in there. I go in there telling them like, I think you're going to have a lot of showings, and based upon, you know, how many offers this property got, and maybe another thing that I do is I usually will call the other listing agents if there's a really similar property, and I'll ask them about how many offers did you have, where were they coming in at, and just kind of get that feedback to relate to my seller. So that's a lot of information that, you know, you're not going to just find in the MLS. And I think again that is why we always want to have really good relationships with all of our colleagues from other brokerages too, because they can oftentimes really help us. And especially if it's a competing situation where you're competing for that listing, the more value you can provide in that interview of, hey, by the way, I talked to this agent, they said they got 6 offers, most of them were in this range, they got the, you know, I think that can be super helpful. So I don't like guarantee my seller they're going to get, I will share with them the facts of, okay, here's what's happened, here's what is likely to probably happen here. But I also tell them that they really need to make peace with that number that they listed it for, because ultimately that is the number that you told the world you were willing to accept for your home. So if that number, if you're not okay with that number, then we should probably choose a different number.
And how are you approaching the sellers that want to list higher than what you would recommend?
Okay, so, you know, I will admit this market is just absolute, it's nuts, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of difficult. Pricing is kind of difficult in some ways. I mean, I think you can find the comparables and you can say, okay, here's where I think I would price it. But if they give me a crazy number, I mean, they might just get it in this market, you know. I do let them know, and I probably would pull comparables again and share with them, you know, or just stories of experience where, you know, we were able to get this really high number for this house because we priced it at a number initially that people saw as fair, right? Because the whole reason why we get all these crazy high offers is because we've created an auction style environment and we've created competition. And part of how we have done that is by setting the deadline and getting the masses in, right? And so if they really want some crazy high number, oftentimes the secret to that is just to price where it should be priced. And then that's why buyers go in and say, oh my gosh, this is a great deal. Oh, I have to have this house. And that's why they pay more. They don't pay your crazy price because you list it there. They pay your crazy price because you've made something more attractive to them and you've created like a competitive situation. So I tell them that. Now, if they are just dead set on listing at a really high price, I will usually, I mean, in this market, I will indulge them at that price if that's really what they want to do. And I will represent the house the best that I can, the exact same way I would if it was priced at where I wanted to price it. I will print off the stats again and say, okay, on average, homes are selling in this many days. Here's the longest that it took a similar home to sell. So let's just say on average, they're selling in 6 days. And most of the time, if they're selling in 6 days, it's because there was a deadline set and that was the 6th day, right? Like it's not that it took 6 days to sell, that was how many days they allotted for marketing time. But if there's one on the market that had been on, let's just say 21 days, then I might tell my seller, okay, great, I will indulge you at that price. Once we hit 21 days or 22 days, which is the longest that another similar home has been on the market, that's when we need to agree that we need to do a price reduction because the market has spoken and we're too high.
So tell me about your consistent communication with your sellers, right? Like, I'm sure you don't wait till the 21st day. So we go on the market. What is your cadence of providing additional information, feedback, or conversation with your sellers as you navigate a home that may be sitting longer than the market's norm?
Well, so I mean, I have every Tuesday, if it's something that's like on the market for like a long time, they do get a call from myself or my assistant on Tuesdays, just like a check-in. And so really that call is more just a, hey, how are things going? Do you need more flyers? What do you think about an open house? What can we do? And it's really just kind of take their temperature every week and just make sure that things are okay. Because I think that's where things go south is like, if you just ignore your sellers and don't check in with them, then they maybe have a problem and they've allowed it to fester and then it just gets out of control. So we do that check-in. On Fridays, we always send them a copy of all of the statistical data of how many times the house has been viewed on Zillow. We print off all the reports of our marketing. We share with them everything that we've done this week. So again, I think that helps to show them like we're doing our job. So if and part, I mean, there's that reason is twofold. I mean, one is like, I think it's a way to communicate with your seller and let them know that you're still here working on it. But also if it's not selling at the high price, they sure as heck can't come back and say, well, you're not doing your job or you're not marketing my home, because every Friday you have received an email from me sharing what I have done to market your home this week. And so therefore I think I'm doing my job. So yeah, I mean, it usually goes like that. And then I will also share with them, like if in the middle of the week, if something comes on or there's, I don't know, another great comp or something like that, then I might just reach out immediately to just say, hey, this came on or this did whatever. And I think sometimes that serves to help, lower the price or do whatever we need to do. So
I really appreciate you sharing that, right? Because it's the transparency of it, right? Like I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is like, especially if you're a non-confrontational person or you don't like giving bad news, like you dread the Tuesday call to tell them that, hey, we have no offers on the table. And skipping that call is the worst thing that you can do because it causes fear and uncertainty in your seller instead of reinforcing, I'm here, I'm supporting you, I'm working for you, and I'm willing to have the hard conversation. Okay, so Stephanie, we've got this particular mastermind really focuses 2.5 to 7 million. We welcome everyone to the call. So we've got some people that are really still breaking into mastering listings, right? Who may still have some uncertainty or fear around pricing. What is the best advice you can give somebody on their road to mastering the pricing of properties?
Well, I think that you just really have to become a student of the market. Like if you don't have a listing, we don't have practice on our sellers. So like if you don't have a listing appointment or, something that you're working on pricing, like why don't you just, take a random house and run some comps on it or, offer to do CMAs for people in your database. I mean, like right now is probably a great time to do that because people are, they're talking to their friends at work or at church or wherever and hearing about how much the houses are selling for, what their cousin just sold their house for down the street or whatever, right? So, I mean, I think that there's interest, but I think just be a student of the market and just practice that. I mean, I would look at all the statistics. I would, maybe take a couple of houses that come on the market. So like every day I set up there's a hot sheet in MLS. And so I have it set up just to basically show me everything new that came on the market that day, what had a price reduction, what sold, what went pending. And I think probably that's one of the best ways that I've become really familiar with the market, is just watching that every day. And I think the cool thing there too is like, look, some of that data, it's not necessarily related to anything in particular. It's just me paying attention to the market. So, but I will tell you that in doing that every day and seeing, okay, this house was listed here and then it sold for this, or whatever the case may be, all that information is highly relevant in conversations that'll happen 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks from now, right? And so, I think just always paying attention and just become a student of your local market.
I love that. And I love that you gave some really concrete examples of what you can actually do practically, right? Like run practice CMAs, run CMAs for your database. You guys, we are a company of sharing. Who in your market center has listed a house? You go and do a CMA. What offer would you advise a buyer to make? Where do you think it'll sell at, right? Like these are all practice examples that you could easily do. The other thing I would say too is do a CMA on a house and share it with a master, right? Stephanie, if somebody came to you and said, hey, I've got a house that I'm not quite sure, and they said, I've done this CMA, would you be willing to look at something like that and give them some feedback?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that any agent in our office, especially one that's, very experienced with this, they would be more than happy to take a look at that and probably would give you some insight. I mean, I do CMAs different than Terry DeBose does CMAs, than Mondragon does it, right? So, I mean, it actually you probably would glean a lot of information just in talking to different agents too and doing that.
I love it. All right, you guys, we have got a chance to pick the brain of Stephanie. We're going to stay on. We're going to open this up to questions, right? Like make this very conversational. This is a safe place to learn and grow. What questions do you guys have? What challenges are you facing in the field that we can help mastermind and learn together on?
My question is, how do you get them to sell? Everybody is so hung up on where are we going to buy that they have to trust you so much. And so any tips and tricks around getting them on the market?
Well, I mean, I think that goes back to like their motivation and why they're trying to sell. So, and I, not to say we do this, but I think sometimes agents get so hung up in, I have to get the listing. And we fail to think about this from the standpoint of how are we serving our clients and like what are their needs. So so the answer to that question, I think, is really figuring out, okay, do you need to sell or you want to sell? What is it that you want, or where are you trying to move, or what, what's the end goal here? And then kind of working backwards from there. And I think, again, it's not necessarily the money. A lot of times it's the convenience, and it's navigating like their fear of where are we going to go? We're going to be homeless. How is this all going to work? So a couple of things that I will do. I think, I let them know we can always list their property, contingent upon property of purchase, which is not an abnormal thing to see these days. And then, I think also, you can always, and I see a lot more lately of people's having extended possession in their homes after closing. And I let them know, like, as long as we kind of, line that out ahead of time and put those in the remarks, and the buyers are prepared for that being the reality of the situation, they'll probably agree to let you have, 30, 60 days. I mean, that is not a weird thing right now. In fact, we're seeing it a ton. And most buyers, I mean, especially in certain price points, like they may have gotten beat out of 10 offers, So if they finally get one accepted, it's just going to take an extra 30 days to move in. They're cool with that. They're so excited to have a house. So I think doing that. The other thing that I do also is I've got quite a few sellers that they want to sell, but they want to sell to buy a house. And so oftentimes we're going to have to do like a contingent deal or get creative. And so even if we don't have a house picked out, I let them know that what we need to do is get their house totally ready to go. I actually get it photographed prior to us even having another house picked out, or like even going on the market, just so that we have the pictures, we have everything that we need, and we are ready to flip that switch as soon as we see the house come on, so that we can, put our dominoes in a row and move forward. And I think that doing that too alleviates a lot of stress, because when we found this house, oh my gosh, the offers are due on Wednesday, we have to get our house on the market. That is stressful, right? Super stressful. And then it's also stressful for the agent, because now I got to go call in a favor to my photographer, see if we can get them out there right now. So I think doing it that way and just, okay, this is your goal. You want to sell this year or in the next 6 months. Let's get everything ready right now. Let's get everything photographed. Here's the listing paperwork. I'm going to do measurements. We're doing the Matterport. Like, everything's done, so that when we do find that house, I just need you to like vacuum and mop, and then we're good to go. Right. So
how powerful. And when you're making that offer on that property to say, this house is ready to go. Here are the pictures of it. Even.
Yeah. And I think,
wow.
yeah. And if you think about the mentality of the seller that you are presenting that offer to, they're nervous. They don't know these people from Adam. They don't know what house they have to sell. They don't know if it's clean or if it's smelly or, whatever. So a lot of times, if I'm able to just share a link to the photos that we already have and say, here's the house, it is perfect, we're ready to go, I can guarantee you it will sell, we're good. I think that will help to inspire a lot of confidence in the seller, which will help get your offers accepted for those clients.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I'm going to add to that, right? Like, Sarah, I think that the conversation is we have to think of ourselves as professional problem solvers, right? Like, and a lot of what Stephanie just said is she's saying, I'm removing the stress, I'm removing the uncertainty, I'm removing the questions, right? And one of the hardest things that we find in this is that agents have a tendency to absorb the burden of an outcome. That's not our role, right? Our role is, as their fiduciary, as their professional problem solver, is to merely present them with the options, right? This is option one, this is option two, this is option two. Here's all the ways we can strengthen an offer. Here's all the ways that we can set you up for success. What do you feel comfortable with, right?
Powerful.
Yeah. And the getting the pictures done, I mean, I think the other thing it does too is it kind of helps you make sure you land that listing, because they're going to feel committed to you, that you have already spent money on the pictures. I mean, we can't go with someone else. That's not why I do it, but sure helps.
Awesome. All right. What other questions do we have?
I have a question with the recent modification to Zillow and Redfin basically becoming brokers. A large percentage of people go there first to get the value for their house. When you're having a conversation with somebody and they want to overprice their house, or obviously in today's market it's hard to do that, but Zillow says it's worth 400, they want to go with 450. How do you have that conversation with them to get them either farther down, closer to what people are going to see immediately, so that you can actually get that activity in the house?
Okay, so the question is, like, if they're consulting Zillow and Zillow has given them a number, but they want a higher number? Or
they didn't consult Zillow and they're just like, my house is worth 450, and you went on Zillow before your listing appointment and it said 400. How do you gauge that, or how can you modify, what people, because it's really buyer's perception at that point, right? I mean, it's, if they're going to list at 450, but Zillow says 400, is anybody going to get off the couch to go see that house? Mm-hmm. So how do you taper that, or how do you bring that into your listing appointment?
Okay, super great question. So I would say, and maybe back to like when I'm pricing the house, I always look at Zillow and I always look at Redfin, not because I trust what they have to say, but because I know that my seller looked there before they called me and they know what Zillow says their house is worth. And so I kind of always want to have that number in the back of my head, just so I know what else what their expectation of what I'm going to tell them might be. And I think that we have to remember that those sites, I mean, they have an algorithm, and they're not realtors that have walked through the house and seen all the updates and are able to really see what that house has to offer. Zillow and Redfin, they're just basing it upon algorithms and, county records information and that kind of thing. The other thing I will tell you, and just maybe to say how maybe inaccurate some of those sites are. On Zillow, I have had a number of times where it's been a property that the Zestimate is one number and we list it for a number that's quite different, and maybe like a lot higher. Zillow will actually adjust their estimate. It usually takes them a day or two, and then it typically goes right back up, or it goes somewhere closer to your listing price. And I don't know this for sure, but I suspect it's probably because after it's listed at whatever price, how many hits it gets and likes and shares and whatever, I think that it then maybe determines that it maybe is worth that price. So, I mean, that thing is subject to change all the time. So, and I think if maybe to really answer your question, I more probably just, again, it's back to like your value, right? Like there's tech, and then there's like the relationship. And so I'm a professional. I have this much experience. I'm local. I've seen your home. I walked through your home, and I have this value to add. Zillow or Redfin, those are websites, and they haven't seen your home. So.
Yeah, it's just getting people off the couch to come see the listing if you're going to overprice it. To your point, it does adjust usually within a short amount of time. But
yeah,
I've seen it where listings are over whatever the online price is, and it's a much lower activity on the house. So then it's concern of potentially overpricing the house. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, if we go back to the stats, right, like statistics show that most houses are selling through realtors, right, at this time. So most serious buyers are receiving information from the MLS, not just Zillow, right? Like a lot of looky-loos are going to Zillow, but most buyers or educated buyers are receiving actual houses with real life prices hitting the market, right? And a lot of them have already made offers on houses and missed them. So I think that, once again, Zillow is a tool. And the difference is what Stephanie's talking about is you're the business consultant, you're the relationship, you're the real life person that can say, hey, county records is missing 500 square feet, or missing the bathroom, or compared your home to something that was irrelevant, right?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome, great questions. What else do we have? You guys, we have 6 more minutes. I know we got more questions out there.
So I have a quick question. What I'm having with sellers is that they are, beforehand, before calling me, they're like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about selling my house. Maybe they tell a few people, and then they end up with all these phone calls. I heard you're going to sell your house. Can we get in and see it? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I'm just curious how you coach your sellers to actually get them to market, because I'm having some sellers saying, well, I've already gotten 3 phone calls, let's just talk to these people and see what they might offer. And I just feel like there's so much more value in actually getting them to market. And I'm curious how you guys would coach them to kind of keep their eye on the prize rather than seeing all these other people. And then also potentially having all this interest make them go, well, maybe we can get more, and then ending up overpricing the home.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and a scenario that I think occurs a lot in this market. So I think that probably, again, it just goes back to having that conversation with them about what's important to them. So they might want to sell to, their friend's sister, because they know that that's a smooth, easy transaction. And again, it's more about, they want safety and security of, I know I have a buyer, they're going to pay me this. I know this person, I'm familiar with them. I'm not worried about them backing out. If that's the case, great. Let me help you through that. And, maybe we can do it for a lesser, fee or whatever, that might be what's important to them. I will probably also have the conversation and just couch it in the sense of like, okay, well, that's an option if that's what you want to do. And that's what this could look like. I will tell you, in this market, we have a lot of buyers, and I probably pull out, our months in inventory, and I go over what that means and just let them know that, like, right now, statistically speaking, we have about 22 days of inventory in Eugene, and let them know kind of what that stat actually means. And it really educate them and just let them know, if we are to put your house on the market and we allow, do photos, put it all on the websites, we do the open house, we give it, 5 to 6 days of marketing time where we expose it to the masses and then see what other offers come in. It's possible that we will get a better offer than these ones that these people have proposed. And so then I just kind of go over that eventuality with them and what's more important to them. Would you rather see what else you can get, knowing that this buyer is still going to be here if this fails and we don't get a better offer? Or, you know, if it's important to sell to that particular person or something, you could always do like a right of refusal to where, okay, we're going to collect all the offers, see how high they go, and then we'll go back to your friend and say, okay, here's the offers that we got. Do you want to beat that or not? And again, it's to what's important to them. It might not be money. It's not always money. So
Stephanie, what I love what you're saying there, right? Like as realtors, we have to be careful not to anchor ourselves in our own beliefs, right? Like our role is to represent them. And you know what? There are going to be people out there that an iBuyer is the best situation. There are going to be people that who a single party sale where the house doesn't ever hit the market does make sense to them, right? Like whether it's they're having a life crisis or they don't want to put their home on the market. It's about listening and then giving them the options. And I love what you said, Stephanie, just because they sell it to a friend, it doesn't mean that you can't still say, here is how I can represent you in the sale. Just because they want to take a Zillow offer doesn't mean that you can't say, hey, no problem, I will guide you through it for 2%. So don't anchor ourselves in our own beliefs. This is about serving them, and that's the infinite game, right, Stephanie?
Yep, absolutely. And the other thing I'll just say is I just had this a couple weeks ago. It was a condo, and the neighbor said, well, I have 3 or 4 friends that that are going to buy this. And the neighbor, she is a very well-known realtor in town that is now retired and about 93 years old. Anyway, so she's wonderful. But she had all these people that supposedly were going to buy the condo. Well, I put them into the listing as excluded parties, and that we would have a lesser fee worked out if basically the seller were to bring them, but it still allowed me to put the property on the market, do my thing, and collect multiple offers. And guess what? None of those 3 people ever came forward. So just understand, like, their mentality of how this works versus how reality is oftentimes is skewed. I don't tell them that. I let them, oh, okay, great. This person wants to buy. Okay, wonderful. What is their name? Well, let's put them in the contract then. Half the time, you're never going to hear from that person, but your seller's going to feel like, okay, well, this person might come through. And if they do, we're going to do it for 2%. It's never going to happen, but it's there.
I love it. So many like real life tactical tools. All right, you guys, it is 9:45. This was awesome. We hope that you guys were all able to take something out of this and apply it to your businesses today. Go out and take those listings. We need them out there. Stephanie, huge thank you. This was incredible. It is recorded, and we will be releasing it on our kwtechhelp.com page, so that if you want to go back and take any additional notes, please do so. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next month for another topic of the moment. So bye, you guys. Have a great day.